everybody, welcome back to my channel. Camelia here, and today I want to share with you the last steps on making the McCalls 8121. I tried to make a live stream here on the channel with putting the sleeves and putting the lining, but that didn't work, so I made a complete recorded video. So I'm showing you here how to put the sleeve lining, how to put the shoulder pads into the sleeve. Here in the shoulder, this pattern doesn't have shoulder pads, but I did add in my jacket to get a little bit of support here on my shoulders. And I'm also, I think the most important thing, I'm showing you how I'm putting the lining completely by machine, and also how exactly to sew here around these tricky bits at the ends here. So this is also included in this tutorial. I'm giving you some tips on trimming all the seam allowance, and also something very important, I think, pressing the parts of the jacket after everything is sewn. I think it's really important. So I don't know if you are making this jacket, or if you make any jacket, I think you have some use from this sewing tutorial. I hope you will enjoy it. So the first thing I want to show you is how I'm putting the sleeve lining into my lining. This is the second sleeve. I did already done one. So I have here my sleeve, and as I said, this lining fabric is raveling really badly. So I just marked here the notch for the shoulder, and I don't use the original notches that are on the pattern, but I always I saw this method in one of the craftsy classes from Kennedy King, and there he's doing he's making the area where the easing is happening on the sleeve cap a little bit bigger than what the original pattern is giving, and it's always working. I'm doing this, I don't know, for many years in my jackets. I'm really pleased with this method. So essentially I lined up the under seam of the sleeve, and if you have a sleeve with a panel here under, you align the notch that is meeting with the underarm with the side seam on the bodies. So I have a seam here, so I'm lining my seam, my underarm sleeve seam, with the notch for the shoulder. Should be something like this. And then what I want to do is, you see these folds here, this one and this one, I want to come a little bit, maybe an inch or something like that higher, somewhere here. I don't want to put pins because this fabric is really, it's getting a big mess. I'm happy that I'm almost done with it. So I'm just going to start my how should I say, my easing or my crimping from here to here. And for this I'm using a method that I saw from another great instructor, from Janet Prey, where she's using crimping, so not so much adding those ease stitches, but adding a row of stitches here in the cap, and I'm going to show you in a moment how I'm doing that. And I'm going to start from one of the marks I've made. I know that my seam allowance is 5/8 of an inch, and I'm going to start here, and I'm using a normal stitch length. And what I want to do is to put my finger in the back of the presser foot, and I'm just going to keep it there and sew as much as I can before I release the fabric. So I'm going to keep the fabric from going away from the presser foot, and of course I want to stitch just inside that 5 of an inch seam allowance, because otherwise I'll have to take these stitches out because they'll be visible in the garment. So I'm just going to start sewing, and if you can see, I'm just inside this line of 5/8 of an inch. I should say maybe I'm sewing now with a 1/2 inch. Let's see, I'm going on. This fabric is a disaster. And you'll see that I'm getting here some really light gathering. I'm going to show it in a minute. And also here, with all this unraveling of the fabric, I still need to keep those as a reference for my 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. And I'm almost done. Being really careful with this. And now I can cut my thread, and I will show you what I have. Let's see. Put the machine away. Okay, let's see. So this is what I have now, and as you can see, it's just a little bit gathered, but it's actually enough to give me that a little bit of I don't know, shaping of the sleeve cap. As you can see here, if I was to put this like this, it's just enough. Oops. So I'm going to put this in my lining. I'm going to take the lining, and this one is also a really big unraveling mess. So I have here one sleeve which is added in the same way, and I'm going to put it now, of course, in the other armhole. And to do that, let's see if I can zoom out a little bit, like so. So I have here my lining facing up, and I want to find especially the underarm notch. That's very, very important. And I want to turn my sleeve. And I do that with pain in my heart, because this fabric is so, I don't know, it's not really enjoyable to work with, but it's not really shifty. So I'm going to match the underarm seam of the sleeve with the side seam notch on the lining bodice. Put a pin, and then I'm bringing back to watch on the inside of the lining, and I'm finding that other mark that I have here for my shoulder seam, because my notch is long gone by now, and put a pin here too. And what I really want to do now is to walk my sleeve a little bit. I'm not really going to pin this. Let's see. Although I have here the 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and in this kind of rounded seams, I always think that it's really much easier if the seam allowance is a little bit lesser. So in this case, in a sleeve, I think a 1 centimeter is it works great. But and of course this is here not so unraveling because it's a little bit on the bias, and that's saving me. And as you can see here, I have just a little bit of space, but it's not a problem because I'm going to sew this with again with the sleeve against the bed of the machine, against the feed dog, and those are going to help me really nice to ease the sleeve even better and to avoid any puckers. Okay, so let's put a pin here. So the under part of the sleeve is mostly one on one. There are some notches there on the pattern, but if you have no notches, the undersleeve, the under part of the sleeve, so the underarm, is mostly one on one, and then you get some easing in a setting sleeve like this, mostly at the top. And try that way of or positioning those ease stitches a little bit further away, like I showed you, and you'll see that it works really nicely. So I can take off the thing here on my machine to have my free arm. Sometimes it's working nicer. And I'm going to put the whole thing on my machine. And if you have a puff like this and you have an IDT on it, on the double transport thing here in the back, I suggest you to take that to disengage that, because that thing, the IDT is of course helping both fabrics to transport in the same time, but in this case we want to have the part that is on the feed dog to be transported a little bit faster than the upper part, so we don't want them to be at the same ratio. So I'm going to put this with the sleeve on the bed of the machine, and I have 5/8 seam allowance, 5/8 of an inch. I'm just going to stitch this with the usual 2.5. Let's see, lifting a little bit the work up. Overlapping my stitches a little bit. I don't need to back stitch. So this is what I have. Let's put the machine again. Okay, let's take a look first. So this is what I have now, and I think it looks really nice. This is at the top of the sleeve. There are no puckers, as you can see, and I'm going to give this a little bit of steam. And from the right side, again, I'm trying to move this as less as possible. From the right side, the sleeve is looking really nice. As you can see, there are no puckers or ugly things. I have here just a little bit of the those stitches showing, but you know, it's in the lining, nobody's going to watch there. So this is done, and now, so before I'm going to add the lining to the jacket, I have here my jacket, and I have added a shoulder pad because I really think that this is going to look much better if I have a shoulder pad in it. So I have here one, and although I have some really thin sleeve heads, I'm not really happy how the sleeve is looking from the outside, or how it's hanging on my shoulders. So I am going to add some really some thin shoulder pads. I just want to say that, of course, this jacket was designed to have no shoulder pads. So if you want to add a little bit of padding, I think you should add really just a bit. I have here, this is, let's see, this is at the maybe 7 millimeters here, the thickest part. And why is that? Because of course, if you are adding here in the shoulder, then you have more space needed in your armhole. Of course, your armhole is going to get higher because you are adding here at the top. So, but because my shoulder pad, the original shoulder pad, it had 2 layers more of this, but I just opened it up and I just took 2 out, and like this, I think I like it better. And I think these ones are made for blouses or stuff like that, really light tops, so not jackets. But I'm going to, and this one has no, I don't know, longer part or shorter part, like a real tailored shoulder pad for coats, but this is going to work perfect for my jacket. So I want to find the middle of it, and I'm going to make 2 snips here, like so. I hope you can see. And I'm just going to place it here on my seam, and because this one has a yoke, this one back here, I know that is my shoulder seam. And I'm just going to place it with my snip here at the seam on top of my seam allowance. So I don't place it here on the stitching line, but I'm placing it here on top of the seam allowance, flush with the seam allowance. And I'm just going to put a pin. Let's see, I want to pin through all layers, and then as you can see, I need to put it, it's looking a little bit strange, but this is how you should put it, because at the end it's coming, of course, over your shoulder. So, and now from the center, I want to walk it a little bit on both sides, allowing it to come like this, rounded over the sleeve, and not putting the sleeve like so, because then you have a problem. So it needs to walk nicely over the seam allowance. And one more here, let's see. Then I'm just going to baste this with some needle and thread, and I'm going to use some, and now I'm going on the other side of the shoulder seam. I'm going to use some of that extra strong, a little bit thicker thread from Gutermann, the one that I'm using normally for top stitching. So I'm going to use that because that one is nice and thick, and I can use only one strength of knot 2. Okay, a little bit here. So this is how it's looking now, and later I'm going to take care also to put it here a little bit to stay in place. I have here my thread, my needle and thread, and I'm just going to, I don't know, I'm going to sew it from here, and I want to sew it fairly next to the stitching line of the, I don't know, sleeve. Just going to make here too small. Must not be too tight, and the stitches can be fairly long. It's easy, of course, in this case because my shoulder pad is really not so thick. But even here I need to travel up and down. I have some coats where I even added shoulder pads with the sewing machine, and those ones are also really nice. So, you know, I'm always thinking that you should use the methods that they are working the best for your project and the best for your, I don't know, your way of working. Find your ways in everything you are sewing. I mean, in every thing that you need to make. I mean, like adding a zipper, I have a few methods that I like. Sometimes I'm using one, sometimes I'm using another one. Depends on fabric and other details. So I must not pull this too much. This is how it's looking now. I hope this is still recording. And I'm almost at the end. Okay. Yes, I'm at the end. And I'm just going to stop here, take a few back stitches, and this is done. And now what I want to do, I want to put a little bit more thread in my needle. And now what I want to do is to catch the shoulder pad a little bit also on the other side, or on the other side, the upper part here that is on the bodice. And I'm going to show you how I did it on the other one. Let's see. As you can see, here is already stitched, and this nice and I don't know, is sitting on its place without moving around. So the same thing I want to do for the other part. I love how this is looking when it has a little bit of support to the inside, and as you can see, this shoulder pad is really very thin, it's almost nothing. So even if you make a really thin jacket, I think a shoulder pad and a little bit of padding of the sleeve head in your sleeve is always going to give you a nice professional look. So this is how it's looking now, but I want to have that shoulder pad here inside also a little bit anchored, let's say. So what I want to do, I want to be sure that this is sitting nicely in place, like so. Later I'll give it a little bit of steam again. So I have it here and I feel it on the inside. I'm going to put a pin, and I want to have definitely a pin here on my shoulder seam. And let's see, I'm going to bury the point of my needle to the inside to be sure that I will not catch anything, like my hands, in the top of the pin. So this is like this, and I think I need one more here, because this is a little bit in its natural position, let's say, when everything is going to be done, like so. All the points are to the inside, and now I'm going to turn it really nicely, and this is what I have now. And I'm going to take my needle, which is here, and again with a really long stitch, just catching the interfacing in this case because I have interfacing, but if you don't have interfacing, I think the best is to what you need to do is just catch one thread of the fabric without let's see, I need to find a better position for this one. I don't want to smash my collar here. Just a thread of my interfacing. Oops. And the shoulder pad. And this also needs to be fairly with a long stitch, and also how should I say, don't make it tight because otherwise you'll have all kind of pulling from the right side. So I'm going to continue this all the way around to the other side, and I'm going to show you how it's looking from the in the end. So I'm at the end, and I'm just going to take 1 or 2 stitches here and finish my work. Okay, I'm going to cut the thread, and what I want to do now is put my hand here and turn everything. Don't forget you still have your needles here, and take this all out. And now that is sewn, I'm going to give this a little bit of steam to shape that or to allow that shoulder pad to get a nice shape here inside, and then my sleeve is nice, and everything is now ready to be lined. So I'm going to put the lining finally. So to put the lining in the shell, so attach the lining to the outside of the jacket, I started and I pinned from one edge, from the left edge, all the way around the neckline. Again, the collar should be sandwiched inside here, between the lining and the outer jacket. So I pinned all the way around to this edge, and I need to do something very important here at the right edge as one of the jacket. I'm just going to follow along and sew with the 5/8 of an inch seam allowance until I meet this little corner here where my zipper meets the jacket and that front piece. So I just sticked a pin exactly where the previous stitching line is ending. But on the left side I need to do a little change from what the original pattern was given. So I'm going to try to show this a little bit at an angle to be more visible. Let's see. Oops, I think that's okay. So I have here the jacket. So again, this is happening only on the left part of the jacket. So as you can see, I marked here a point where my little facing is going to be attached on the jacket, and I need to attach this with the 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. That's this allowance here. So I'm going to attach it here, and here is a very important point. I need to stop 5/8 of an inch away from the edge of the facing, and I'm going to try to zoom this a little bit in. So the idea is to stop here 5/8 of an inch away from the edge. My lining here is still hanging a little bit free, and I want to cut this allowance, leaving 5/8, around 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, let's say from this point where I'm stopping to here. So this I want to take off, and I'm going to cut that, because that's going to allow me to stitch everything with my machine. So like this, I'm just going to cut this like so. And this is a way that you see in many patterns that they use this method of bagging the lining, to have this little corner here, the facing or of the front panel. So I'm just going to stitch from this point. It's a very important point to be exactly at the 5/8 of an inch. I'm just going to stitch from here all the way around. So all the way around to the other edge. What I need to be careful is that here on the left side I have the zipper here in the seam, so I'm going to use my zipper foot to stitch until here at the top, and then I'm going to switch back to my normal presser foot, and I'm going to continue stitching. I'm going to start sewing. The problem is that I have now this little zipper foot, and I'm going to try to see if I can. So this needs to go away, and I want to, because this zipper foot, it allows me to move only the zipper foot and to keep my needle centered. Okay, let's see, because here I really need to be on that 5/8, and I am, because I have here a marking on my plate, and I can let me see. Where is my thing? I think it's here. Yes. And if I can put my needle down. Okay. Okay. And here is of course that bulky thing from the separating zipper, so I need to be really careful there. And I'm just going to put my stitch a little bit low. Now I can put it back. I don't want to back stitch there. It can be dangerous to go too much. Okay. So now it's important to have this as close as possible to that thing. Okay. I think I need to go one more. Let's see. And now I can go here. It's a little bit of a I think this is a great little foot. It's the first time using it. I saw it a few times on some craftsy classes, but it is kind of great because you have really nice control where your okay, let's see, I feel my pin. Okay, I'm going to go a few stitches more. My pull is here somewhere, so maybe I need to put it even more up, just a little bit. Okay. enough, yes, I can put my needle down and I can reach here and find that pull and just push it back at the end so I can go on with stitching. Okay. And this, it should be my 5/8. Let's see. I'm okay like this. I'm going to take just a few stitches here, and then I'm going to go back to my normal foot. Now I can come back here and go on with my stitching. I'm going to pick up just from the latest stitches I just made. Just going to sew this. What I do want to do now is to put my differential feet back, as I want this to be one-on-one. So as I'm coming here at the end, I have two important points. One is this corner, which I'm going to put my stitch to a 1.5, as I want to have it really nice and tight, that I can make a nice corner when I'm going to turn this. I'm going to take one stitch more, and now I'm perfect on 1.5. What I want to do, I want to cut this seam allowance just a little bit here, because there is already so much thickness. And I want to come and I want to stop exactly at this point where the zipper that is inside is meeting with the other panels, you know. So I'm going to go here and now I want to be very careful. I want to put it back to 1.5 and just, let's see, I need to be here. So I'm going to stick the needle exactly where I need to be. Take this one out. I'm going to stitch. And because I know that here I have the zipper, I'm just going to walk it with my hand, as I don't want to break a needle. I think I'm safe, and I'm going to cut backwards. So let's see. You see, I'm exactly on the point here. So this is perfect. What I need to do now is to, of course, I'll have to trim the seam allowance because it's really big here, and I also need to I'll have to do a little bit of corner preparation. But next I'm going to I need to sew the hem, and before I'm going to sew the hem, or I can do this later. Okay, so now we can sew the hem, and I'm going to start by sewing from one end, so just matching the edge of my lining with the edge of my jacket, and I'm just going to sew with the seam allowance, with the lining against the bed of the machine. And if this is happening to your jacket, that your lining starts to fall apart, please try to keep the seam allowance the original length of the fabric. As you can see here, I have all these little bits that they are from the fabric coming apart, so I'm going to use this edge as the beginning of my seam allowance. So I'm going to sew this again with the lining against the bed of the machine, starting from one edge, from where I just cut it there, you know, that little L shape that I had to cut out. So I'm going to start sewing, and I have already the rest pinned, matching the rest of the seams. So I'm just going to start sewing here using the 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm going to put my stitch back, 2, 3. I have here my pins, taking care that all the seam allowances inside are facing to the right way, how they're supposed to be facing, to the front or to the back. Okay. And I'm approaching here, and again I'm going to match the lining to the hem edge here, to the jacket edge, the lower edge. Oh, this is a really big mess, and I hope I'm still straight. If I knew that this fabric is going to be so bad, I would have overlocked it a little bit, especially on the straight edges. Okay, so this is done. So now everything is, as you can see, enclosed, and it's just a bag, inside out. And this is the bit that is always giving problems and making everything looking really homemade. This is what I have now here at the left part, you know, where I took out this little piece, and now I need to cut to this point only the front bodice, let's say, only the jacket part, so not the lining or the facing, only this. And I need to cut exactly to my starting point of the stitching line, like so. Now that I cut it, now I can fold it a little bit up, and this is the crease that I have for the hem, and this now is going to create that little pleat, as you probably can see here. This is that extra that the lining is giving for that pleat, you know, to have the jacket nicely hanged. So again, I cut only the front of the jacket to the stitching line. And now what I need to do, because I have here still that little piece of lining open, I need to fold this up to the crease of the hem. Just going to put a pin here, like so. And now I'm going to trap my lining, as you can see here. I'm going to to let it form the pleat by itself. And it's very easy actually, because you need to finish this seam here up, and you are going to form that pleat automatically, because you have here we are going to put this like so. I'm going to take this pin out. So again, I had it like so, and then I'm going to turn this to the back, and it's going to reveal this little seam here. As you can see, this is the hem, and if I turn it exactly on the crease, I can pin it now really nicely. And this one here. And now, as you can see, here is exactly the corner what I cut. And now I'm going to stitch. I can stitch from here to here, or I can stitch just from the point here to overlap a little bit with the original stitches here. This needs to be really nicely formed. Let's see. It's really hard to see for me. I think I need to have glasses very soon. And you will see that, I think you can see here that the pleat of the lining is already formed. So this is one side. I think this is maybe the most trickier one. Now I'm at the other edge, and here I also need to clip a little bit in order to turn this, and I'm going to clip the seam, this little bit that is the seam of the bodice, let's say. So, not let's say, it is the seam of the bodice. So I'm just going to clip it exactly at the point where those stitches are ending. And because I did such a good job with my matching of my thread, it's hard to see. I hope I'm on the right spot. Yes. Okay. And now it's actually a little bit the same. So I have here my front edge, and now I can turn the hem and form the pleat. And again, I'm going to stitch to close that allowance that lining. So I'm going to flip this, and what I want to do, I want this, because it's clipped, it's going to turn really nicely, and I want to put that facing a little bit away, and of course I want to have this edge here of the lining nicely flat, and this is going to how should I say, it's going to turn really nicely. I'm going to follow again the crease here of the hem, and I'm just going to pinch this, and it's a little bit tricky, especially because I'm on a strange position, but this is how it's supposed to be, to look. Let's see if I can turn this. So now I'm going again from the same corner here. I am going to stitch back into the original stitching line at the between the facing and the lining. So I'm going to stitch here and again stop at this corner, and then I can show you how to turn everything and trim and, you know, make it ready to be finished. Okay, so let's see, I have here this bit, and I think I can safely sew it from this side. I really want to start on overlapping with a few of the previous stitches. Let's see, keeping the 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Maybe put my stitch length to a 2.5. And here everything needs to lay flat, because I have here that pleat inside. I need to have everything laying flat, so no extra fabric or lining or I don't know. And I need to stop here. It's going to be a little bit bulky, but I can work this with my hand, because here I have also that stop of the, or that beginning of the separating zipper. Let's see, where am I? Just a few stitches more. And I lowered my stitch length. And I think I'm just one stitch away. Try to back stitch a little bit. And I think I'm done. Okay, let's see. But that looks good. You can see it here. So this is going to be perfect. So this is going to be turned, but before I turn it, all this needs to be, there is a lot of trimming to be done. But I have one more. And let's see. Is this one here? Here I can start from here and go up to the previous stitches. Let's see. I have here my point. And this nice if I can start on it. Again, 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. I have a fairly small stitch here. I'm going to put it back to 2.5. And again, everything needs to lay flat. That means that that pleat is also nicely formed. Okay, and I'm done. So this is how it's looking here. As you can see, it's formed. So now I can start trimming around the neckline everywhere, and then I'm going to show you how to put to sew the sleeves in the round, the hem. This point might be a little bit boring for some people, and might be something that a lot of people are trying to skip, but I think this one is also one of the most important steps in making coats, actually in making a lot of types of garments. Trimming seam allowances. And for example, in designer stitch patterns, most of the seam allowances they don't need to be trimmed because they're already adjusted, like smaller ones for the neckline and smaller ones for the armholes. But in this case, with 5/8 of an inch, you always need to have seam allowances trimmed. So I'm going to show you how I am working in these cases. Okay, I'm going to start, for example, doesn't really matter where you start, you need to end at the same place. So let's see, this is a front piece, and I really want to trim this corner and also a little bit of the seam allowances here, because when this is going to go to the inside and it's going to be inside, this is going to come over each other. So if I have this lump of fabric here and I don't trim it, it's going to look really, really bad. So I'm just going to turn it, and I like to use fairly big scissors to trim. And now I know that I want to stagger a little bit my seam allowances to make one bigger than the other one. And and of course the one that is going to face to the outside, and in this case here in the front is going to be the one of the facing. I want to make the facing one a little bit bigger and this one a little bit shorter, the one that is going to be to the inside. So I'm going to cut from the one that is going to be hidden, and here I just want to go a little bit further, and also at the neckline and I can, let's see, if I'm going to keep my shears not straight but like this, you'll see that my seam allowances are going to be different lengths, and that will do it. You don't need to have a really big difference, but by keeping the scissors like this, you have immediately a different length. Of course, the problem is that this is a little bit an odd position for me, and I cannot be straight, but I'm going to continue this, and I'm going to do the same for the neckline. For the neckline, of course, being this rounded edge, maybe I'll have to clip. And let's see, this one is not really important because the color is coming here. Which one is bigger, which one is smaller. But the same principle here with the shears a little bit on the side, then you have immediately different lengths of seam allowances. So I'm going to finish this. I'm going to clip a little bit, but not really close to each other in the rounded areas, and then I'm going to show you, let's see, the same. I have here the corner at the edge, at the front, the same, and this one is going to be also, so when this one is going to come together, it's going to be no problem to, this one is okay. So this needs to, I need to have here also a little bit, okay. So this I'm going to continue, and I'm going to show you how I'm pressing all this. And I'm going to turn my jacket, and as I said, I have here a big opening in one of the side panels, and I'm going to turn it now. I'm going to try to turn it first as it is, and after that I'm going to work the corners nicely. Okay, taking a little bit care that my lining is not completely going to burst. Okay, I have here a sleeve, and at this moment the sleeves are still free from each other. Okay, just, and of course my sleeves are also falling apart. Okay, I just added the pins here because I want to keep this gusset in place, as that one is also from lining, and there is the risk that is going to fall also apart. So here I have one edge. Okay, let's see, and I think it's completely turned. Okay, and now I have this. I have the jacket turned. Let's see. I have a point turner somewhere here. Okay, let's see. So let's start at one place. I have here one. Yes, I'm here. So what I want to do is to try to take it out, and I'm going to work it, you know, in steps. I have here also one point, but what I want to do is to reach with my point turner. Where is my hole? My hole is here. My hand inside, and then I have here one corner that I think is important here not to pull with the turner, but just shape the corner over the point of my turner really gently, because I know that I have there a really small seam allowance because I trimmed a lot. So I have here one, and at the moment that I'm going to press this, I need to be careful that this is going to fall open, so I want to have the seam a little bit favored to the back, like so. And then again, inside of my coat or for my jacket, I'm going to work the next corner, and this is also an important one because it's at the edge of my jacket, and also the same, nice and flat. And here, I'm going to turn this for a moment. This I have now as you can see, where I had that all those points meeting is here. As you can see, the pleat is here inside. I hope you can see it. So I'm going to follow the rest of the jacket, turning all these corners nicely out. I have, let's see, I'm going to show you this one at the other part of the zipper. So it will be this one, and here you can really see that joint very, very nice. And again, here is the pleat is already cut in the seam, and I think you really cannot get such a nice finish with by sewing this bit here by hand as in the instructions. And I think the effort is really minimal to achieve this. So I'm going to continue turning everything nicely, and then I'm going to show you how I am pressing this to give a really nice sharp look to my jacket. And then we are going to do the sleeves and we are done. So I have my little board here, and there are some things that I want to do. So I know, as I said, that the facing is falling open to the outside. So because of that, I want to favor this seam. So this is the front. Let me put these seam allowances nicely. So I'm going to roll this first, that I can feel the seam here. And here, because I know that somewhere here there is a break point, how the jacket is falling. When the jacket is, let's see, when the jacket is worn open, I want to have it here exactly on the seam. Form this corner nicely with the seam that I have here nicely exactly on the edge. And what is important here is not to press the iron completely on the fabric, but working it more with steam and with my hand. Or I have here a clapper or a piece of wood. I'm going to turn this that I can see what I am doing more or less. Yes, I think it's okay. Okay, so you see this is really nice and flat. I don't really like this corner. Okay. And now here I'm going to start to bring this really, really good on the edge, with maybe just a smidge of the fabric turning to the okay. So this is when this is turning like this, you can see this is a really neat edge here. Then I'm coming here, and here I definitely want to have the edge to the outside, because when this is flipped like this, it's going to be really neat. Okay, again, give it a good steam, but not pressing it. And I really think that a really nice coat can be sewn really nice, can be completely destroyed by wrong pressing or not pressing it. So let's see, I have here my hem. I'm going to put it a little bit here to put my jacket a little bit higher, because I don't want to press all kind of stuff on the rest of the jacket. Okay, and here I want to roll this seam that is completely perfect. And I think that here is a lot of feeding with your fingers and allowing the fabric to, I don't know, to cool down. Of course, I'm working here with a wool, and probably if you work with another kind of fabric, you'll have to adapt your pressing method to that kind of fabric. And I think pressing is really very important in sewing. Sometimes it can happen that bad pressing can destroy a really nice sewn garment. Okay, and here again, just going to press this. And again, what I realized that it was better to add, I don't know why they did not do this, to put a facing in the back here from the fabric. I think it would have been nicer, so that the lining is not going all the way to the collar edge here. Okay, and I'm coming to this side, and again feeling that this edge here with this one, they're nicely I don't know, sharp on each other. And there is going to be just a little bit of inside sewing, like tacking the sleeve lining at the armhole against the armhole of the jacket. Okay, so here I have again a point where I know that it's going to fall open, like so, together with my collar, nicely. So what I want to do here, also here I want to favor that seam to the inside, and again when you do this, you should be careful that the teeth of the zipper can get really hot, especially if you have a metal zipper. So you can see this is really nice and sharp. And here again I want to put these ones nicely flat, and I'm really not going to put my fingers on this, because I know that those teeth can be really hot. Again, just a little bit, and then okay, bits of my lining that it survived, and I hope it's going to behave nicely once that is sewn in the jacket. Oh, those teeth are really hot, and I'm going to pull this up, and I'm going to give it a little bit of press, nicely pressed here. Okay, like so. So the jacket is nicely pressed. As you can see, these bits are really nice. Having the hem creased already before adding the lining is helping a lot, of course. This is how it's looking, and when this is going to be in the position, in the right position, I'll have that little pleat here, and this I'll stitch later close. I can stitch this by hand, or I can stitch it with a matching thread. I can stitch it close, you know, with a really small edge stitching here, but probably I'm going to stitch it by hand to have it really invisible. To attach the lining on the sleeves, I pushed the sleeve lining into the sleeve. So I want to have 2 matching seams to be sure that everything is sitting nice and straight, and I'm not going to twist anything. So I have here the underarm sleeve, and I'm going to pinch them together like this, and I'm going to search for my hole again and go between the sleeve and the sleeve lining and the sleeve of the jacket, and I'm going to, as you can see, I come here with my fingers and I'm going to pinch these two right sides together immediately. It's really hard to see, but I'm keeping this like this, and this one I'm going to put it also right sides together with the, as you can see here, the 2 seams are together, and I folded them to be right sides together, and I'm going to push everything through my hole. And now so I'm still keeping those 2 together, and I want to match the seams, these 2, and I'm going to sew everything and walk the seam just because, as I checked in the beginning, my sleeves are the same width, and then I'm going to continue this, keeping all those edges aligned, even if my fabric is really damaged. And here I have that gusset. Oops. And I'm just going to bring this around, and as you can see, everything is fitting nicely. The other seam of the lining should fit a little bit around, I don't know, in the middle of the gusset. And here I'm coming back with my really damaged fabric. So now I'm going to sew this with 5/8 of an inch seam allowance all the way around, and I'm going to repeat for the other sleeve, and then I'm ready to do the last bits inside the jacket and close it. And I'm going to sew with the lining again against the bed of the machine. Doesn't really matter where you start. I'm happy this lining survives to be sewn in. It's not really necessary to backstitch here because I'm going to overlap those stitches. Coming really close. Okay. Being careful that you don't catch the lining sleeve if you are sewing with the lining underneath. Coming back to the previous stitches, and I'm going to overlap a little bit. And my sleeve is done. And let's see, this is how it's looking now, as you can see. Still a big mess. And I'm just going to turn it to show it to you how it's looking. And I'm just going to grab here from the outside, pull everything out, and if I did it well, it should come nicely like so. So this is how it's looking. I think it's really pretty. It needs to be a little bit pressed. And this is my sleeve with the extra pleat a little bit here inside and with the gusset. And I think this is really nice and perfect. So now I'm going to repeat for the other sleeve and I'm ready for the last bits. I just want to say that here I'm going to anchor my hem a little bit to the inside. So I can do that with my machine, or I can just do it from the inside with from here with a few hand stitches. But I can also do it with my machine just in the previous stitching line with a few stitches, and that's going to anchor for sure my my hem also to keep it exactly nicely here, because it's a bit of bulk here because of the zipper. But this is looking really good. So the sleeves are also attached, and one of the last tips that I want to give you is making sewing the underarm seam of the lining with the underarm seam of the jacket. And to do that, I think I'm on the right position, yes. I'm just going to reach here, pull the sleeve a little bit back, and I'm just going to find the original, you know, the underarm of the lining with the underarm of the jacket. So I see here the one, and what I want to do is to match the seams of the sleeve of the lining and the jacket. I'm going to put a pin. Let's see. There, here. Remember, I trimmed a little bit of my seam allowance of my underarm, so I need to take that into account. And I have here the underarm for my sleeve of the jacket. I'm going to match it with the one of the lining, and it's a little bit I don't know, it's a little bit difficult because here is the sleeve is attached, and let's see, I want to put it a little bit more. And actually it's really the most important is here at the underarm, because like that I know that the lining is going to stay in place, and there is no chance that I'm going to push the lining out when I'm putting my jacket on. So I'm just going to sew it with some really bright pink, or brighter pink thread, that you can see what I'm doing. Okay, oops, and I'm going to sew it with a double thread to be sure that I'm not going to lose the needle somewhere in the jacket, and then try to find it. I'm going to make a small knot, and it's really just a really how should I say, running stitch. Or is it a slipped stitch? God, I'm really bad in hand sewing. Or the names at least anyway. So really not too tight. Let me see, because I think here the lining did slip a little bit down. Yes. And this is going to keep the sleeve in place, the lining, so it's not going to go out when I'm putting my hand in my sleeve. And so this is done. And now I can cut this. And I need to leave this lining in peace, because otherwise it's going to get completely... So this is now attached here, so it's not going to go anywhere when I'm putting my hand in my sleeve. This cannot go out anymore because it's stuck there at the underarm. So I'm going to repeat for the other sleeve also. So my lining is anchored here at the underarm from the inside, and now the last step is going to be to sew this closed with a little bit of hand stitching here, or I can also take it to the machine and put it like this, and with a really small edge stitch to stitch it together. So this was the sewing tutorial for putting the lining in the McCalls 8121. I hope you will have a lot of use from this one. And of course, you can apply all the things you saw in this tutorial. You can apply them also in other jacket making. I think they are very, very useful tips. Don't forget, you'll find here on the channel also the full review of this pattern. I have a bit mixed feelings, although I'm really happy with my jacket. The pattern itself, I don't know, maybe I had really high expectations seeing this sparkly version on the cover. But anyway, don't forget, you can find it here on the channel, the full review of the pattern, also with a lot of tips on things that I changed to make it even better. So I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and give me a thumbs up if you liked the video, and I hope to see you soon. Bye!